to the arcade. You know, Mario Kart is one of those series that you can always come back to for some guaranteed fun. Whether it's Mario Kart 8 with its brand new DLC and never before seen characters, or it's an old favorite like Mario Kart 64, I feel like each entry in the series has something fun and unique to offer to old and new players alike. And one of the standout features of Mario Kart is the amazing tracks that each game has. It's one of the biggest things that separates Mario Kart from all the other kart racers out there. So today I thought we'd take a look at what I consider to be the best of the best. Starting from the original Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo, going all the way to the new DLC for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch. We'll look at all of my favorite tracks and then pick a number one favorite from each game in the series. So here we go. Here are my top 9 best Mario Kart tracks. Super Mario Kart released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in September of 1992. Super Mario Kart released for the Wii Virtual
Super
Console
Mario
in
Kart
November
released
of
for the
2009.
Wii U Virtual Console
Super
in
Mario
August
Kart
of
released for the Super
2014.
Nintendo Entertainment
Super
System
Mario
Classic
Kart released
in
for the
September
new
of
3DS
2017.
Virtual
Super
Console
Mario
in
Kart
March of
released for the
2016.
Nintendo Switch Online service in September of 2019. Do you get how popular this game is yet? Nintendo sure does. They've released it 6 different times. The 4th best-selling Super Nintendo game of all time, and also considered one of the best games of the 16-bit generation, Super Mario Kart laid the foundation for the greatest kart racing franchise of all time, and one of Nintendo's best-selling series ever. While Super Mario Kart has its downsides opposed to newer titles in the series, the original is still fun to go back to, although probably not for much longer than an hour or two at a time. That said, there are still some amazing tracks here, but none better than Bowser Castle 3. Yeah, there's a few Bowser Castles. And some people criticize me for not choosing Rainbow Road. But I just like Bowser Castle 3 so much. It was one of the first tracks that I can remember to give racers multiple choices of routes through the course. It is really tough too. It's got lots of sharp turns and tight hallways. And it has one of my signature patents to know if it's a good course or not. It starts out with a left turn. I love the look of the Bowser's Castle tracks. They always stand out to me with their characteristic red lava and gray bricks from the castle. The music is fittingly sinister as well. The obstacles you'll learn to hate are not necessarily the thwomps, which are totally unfair, but these annoying little corners that you will inevitably bounce off of. Despite being one of the harder tracks in the game, it's still a fan favorite, and it's my personal choice for the best track of Super Mario Kart. Mario Kart 64 released for the Nintendo 64 in February of 1997. My first experience playing this game was at the dentist when I was about 6 or 7 years old. It was not out in the main lobby, no, it was in the back after your name had already been called. It was in a display kiosk like you might see at a Toys R Us or a Target. It even had multiple controllers so 2 kids could play at once while awaiting their dental fate. Mario Kart 64 is famous for not only being a great upgrade to the newly established Mario Kart formula, but also for bringing the series into 3D for the first time. And it had an awesome lineup of great tracks to choose from. There are a ton of classics here, but the one that stands out the most to me is Yoshi Valley. It added a unique challenge to the game by not showing what position players were in throughout the entirety of the race. It does show you where everybody is at on the minimap, but unless you're looking closely, it's hard to tell where everyone sits in their position. Except for yourself, of course, I guess. It does, however, show you the variety of different paths you can take through the laps, though. And to be honest, even though I have played this track 100 times, I'm still not sure which line is optimal. I just kind of wing it every time, and it seems to work out. One thing I really love too is the giant Yoshi egg guarding the bridge out of the valley. It's kind of reminiscent of Indiana Jones, and depending on where the egg is at when you get there, gives you a chance to either try and get sneaky and go under it, or makes you wait and see if anyone else gets crushed before it clears the way. Mario Kart Super Circuit was released for the Game Boy Advance in 2001, and it was the first handheld entry in the series. Although it came out after Mario Kart 64, it seems to have more in common with Super Mario Kart in terms of track design and overall presentation. This was probably the game I played the most on my GBA, and while it's a great game and a decent Mario Kart game, it just plays better on literally anything other than the original Game Boy Advance. The SP, the DS, or even the Switch now are just better ways to play this game if you want to go back to the Game Boy Advance era and get a taste of this one. This game had a ton of tracks, a bunch of new ones obviously, but also every single track from Super Mario Kart thrown in there as well. That being the case, this was the first game in the series to introduce retro tracks as a pillar of the Mario Kart formula. And out of all the many courses in this game, Sky Garden is undoubtedly my favorite. It kind of feels like Rainbow Road in a way, being way up in the sky and having no guardrails to keep you on the track if you veer too far to one side. It also has some of the easier shortcuts to pull off, which just feels really good, especially against the CPU, since they just don't know how to do it. The visuals on this track are striking and unique from a lot of the other courses in the game, but the background panning doesn't really work that well, especially on the larger stems that you see in the background. But everything else looks really great though, and the music on this course is by far the best in the game, and probably one of the best in the entire series. Anytime I replay Super Circuit, I always jump to Riverside Park, Ribbon Road, and of course, Sky Garden. Sky Garden is just one of those peaceful tracks that you can vibe to on a chill afternoon or evening. Mario Kart Double Dash released for the Nintendo GameCube in November of 2003, and this game pretty much flew right by me. I never owned a GameCube, and even though my best friend had one, we typically only played Kirby Air Ride and Super Smash Bros. Melee on the GameCube. Later down the line, my brother did grab a GameCube and a copy of Mario Kart Double Dash, but that was years after the Wii had already been out. Still, we had some fun going back through this game and never even knew about all the unique mechanics like the special item combinations. Also, I know this is a weird stopping point, but I feel like I need to put this in here before we move on because it will not apply to any other games in this series. Have you ever noticed how older Mario Kart games feel slippery? Or at least they don't feel the same as Mario Kart Wii and beyond. Well, that's because for the first 4 entries in the Mario Kart series, the kart steers from the back. And what I mean is, when you turn your kart left or right, it's the back wheels that you're turning, whereas in all the other Mario Kart games, the kart steers from the front wheels. Front wheel turning is way more intuitive and more like what real-life cars and bikes are designed to do, which might explain why some people have problems controlling the older Mario Kart games. I just wanted to throw that out there in case it helps someone who is replaying older games in the series. DK Mountain is my favorite track from Double Dash. Once again, we have an Indiana Jones-esque moment with the boulders tumbling down the mountain. And it just doesn't matter what track it's in, but I always love these segments where you enter a cannon and get launched to the top of a new section of the track. It feels so cinematic and exciting. The graphics and music on DK Mountain are obvious standouts, but I think the actual layout of this course is its greatest strength. It has a ton of variety in its layout, but somehow all the different elements in the course tie together perfectly well to make a super satisfying race to run. While I've probably played Double Dash the least out of all the Mario Karts, it's easy to see why so many people think it's the best one of the series. It has some amazing tracks, and the special move mechanic is something I'd love to see them bring back in a newer entry. Mario Kart DS released for the Nintendo DS in November of 2005. It was the second entry of the series to be handheld, and it was a huge improvement from Super Circuit. Not only did we get a fun roster of characters, a great range of courses, but we also got some of the most fun side content in any Mario Kart game. The battle mode and the mission modes were some of the most fun to play with 4 other players, and this game's online capabilities just made the whole experience that much better. Of all the super fun tracks in this game though, Airship Fortress is the standout for me. I love when the Mario Kart games let the player explore something from the Mario universe that we typically don't get to see from this perspective. And it really makes great use of all the aesthetics and design choices of the track. It also gets great use out of the verticality, specifically in the tower area, which is really fun. It's also really fun when you get to do something in a Mario Kart game that you get to do in the regular games, which in this case is dodging the bullet bills that come from the airship during this last segment of the lap. Mario Kart DS is probably the one that I played most with other people, mainly my siblings, And while probably not my favorite of the series, it's definitely up there for its tight controls, unique roster of racers, and awesome track designs. Story time. Mario Kart Wii released for the Wii in April of 2008, specifically April 27th. I know this because I went to Blockbuster on launch day with my own money to buy a copy of the game. There was one copy left on the shelf for purchase, which shocked me, but regardless, I picked it up and headed to the register. As I put it up on the counter, the cashier looked at the game, then looked back at me and said, "You know this is just a Wii wheel, right? This isn't the actual game." Even being 16 years old at the time, I was smart enough to know when I was being conned. I wasn't sure why he was lying to me at the time, but looking back, I knew that he probably wanted that last copy for himself, but wasn't allowed to purchase it during work hours. So, in order to avoid confrontation, even though I could have easily won that argument, I simply said, "I know it's just the wheel, but I need it anyway because I plan on getting the game as soon as I can, and I figured I'd go ahead and get the wheel now." He looked at me in frustration while ringing the game up for me and didn't speak another word to me after that. As soon as I got out into the parking lot, I opened the box just to make sure the game was actually in there too, which of course it was. It was $50. Anyway, story over. Mario Kart Wii was pretty divisive among my friend group, but not among my family who all loved it because of the motion controls. My friend group loved the graphics and the courses, but didn't like the inclusion of bikes because this is Mario Kart, not Mario Bike. That being said though, everybody who complained about that switched to bikes anyway because bikes are best. They have better drifting and they can do the wheelie, which makes you go faster and helps you avoid spinning 3 times from getting hit by the POW block and only spin once instead. Mario Kart Wii has a ton of great tracks. Mushroom Gorge, Koopa Cape, Coconut Mall, and Maple Treeway, just to name a few, but my favorite was always Toad's Factory. I loved getting a behind the scenes of the creation of item blocks because... And the track design was awesome too, with a ton of variety and interesting moving obstacles that make for an exciting final stretch of the track. I like that there are a lot of tracks in Mario Kart Wii that force you to choose between a faster route or an item block, and that's demonstrated great in this track. The moving floors and dangerous machines feel like Luigi's Mansion callbacks, but with their own flair and unique design, incorporating them greatly into the world of Mario Kart. They didn't have to give item blocks an origin story, but they did. They did that for us. Mario Kart 7 released for the Nintendo 3DS in December of 2011. This was a renaissance of handheld Mario Kart, at least among my siblings and I. And Mario Kart 7 actually introduced gliders and underwater sections which are now auto-includes for Mario Kart 8 and the new tracks from 8 Deluxe. And for this next pick, this might be my only controversial pick of the entire video. My favorite track from Mario Kart 7 is Woohoo Loop. It's the first one that I can remember that didn't have traditional laps and just had 3 different sections of one long course. And it was going around the most sought-after fictional vacation spot in all of gaming, Woohoo Island. I am a huge fan of Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort, so I love seeing this location from Wii Sports Resort in another Nintendo game, especially one where we actually get to race through it and see everything up close instead of just as a backdrop for minigames. There's some fun shortcuts and some alternate paths that you can take throughout the course, but I think what makes it most fun for me is literally just the fact that it's Woohoo Island. I know that may not be a great reason, but it's just the one track that I really love to play over and over just to see more of Woohoo up close. Mario Kart 8 released for the Wii U in May of 2014 and was one of my most played Wii U games aside from Super Mario 3D World. It was on another level graphically from previous entries, and being the first entry in the series in HD, it was overall just a great looking game, especially for the Wii U and for the time when it was released. Not only were the graphics just incredibly improved, but the controls were pretty much perfected with this entry. There are so many different racers and different karts, wheels and glider combos that you can pretty much play this game any way you want to. A lot of the new tracks also had the new anti-gravity mechanic as well, which definitely added some really fun moments, although I wish they would do something bigger with the anti-gravity and make it a little more game-breaking, if you know what I mean. And the greatest track that came from this game, and probably the entire Mario Kart series, is none other than Mount Wario. In Mount Wario, all racers start in the mouth of a helicopter and then jump down onto the mountain to begin their descent. We quickly get to an icy section with branching paths and boost jumps before entering a cavern with a few waterfalls and bats to get in our way. Then we emerge into the side of a dam and then quickly exit to the woods. Through the woods, we can choose our own path as well, using logs as makeshift boost jumps along the way. Then we hit the ski slopes going downhill in a slalom type section until a glider section and then the final stretch to the finish. This track doesn't have traditional laps either, similar to Woohoo Loop and some others like that from Mario Kart 7, and its design totally benefits from that. It makes each section of the track really stand on its own, and like I said about other tracks before, even though there's a lot of variety, all that variety is tied nicely together by the theme of the track, the Mountain of Wario, I guess, and just feels so good to drive. And like I said before, this is probably the best track from the entire Mario Kart series, including the new DLC, and I believe it probably won't be topped until we get a Mario Kart 9, if that ever happens. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe released for the Nintendo Switch in April of 2017, and was the first game I bought for my Switch when I got it in 2020. Because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe originally just included the DLC that released for Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, I'll make my pick from this game be one of the original tracks from the DLC of Deluxe, of which currently there is not many, but my personal favorite is Squeaky Clean Sprint. Yoshi's Island is really great too, and probably objectively better, but I love the fact that, like Ribbon Road, Squeaky Clean Sprint shrinks everybody down to toy size, letting you see a regular old bathroom from a brand new perspective. We all love that in video games, right? Chibi Robo, Army Men, Grounded, and a few others do this, and I just love it. It's so fun to see stuff like this in Mario Kart games when you get to be so up close to it. It's a really great design choice that I think works great, along with the layout of this track being really great too. So there we have it. Bowser Castle 3, Yoshi Valley, Sky Garden, DK Mountain, Airship Fortress, Toad's Factory, Woohoo Loop, Mount Wario, and Squeaky Clean Sprint. My absolute favorite tracks from the Mario Kart series. Looking back and playing through all these games again just proves how fun each entry in the series still is. And while they all share that same kind of formula, they are all still each their own unique game and unique experience. And I'd love to hear from you as well. What do you think of my top 9 favorite courses? And what are your favorite courses from the series? Let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.